Cool, cool. Yeah, so chapter 12, introducing hooks. So let's have a look at what hooks are exactly. So in React, think of hooks as special tools or functions you can use inside function components to give them superpowers, like remembering things such as state, reacting to changes, or doing stuff when something happens. So without hooks, function components are very basic, but hooks make them much more powerful. So hooks are built-in functions in React. So they're built-in functions and you use them inside function components. So they help your components remember values by using useState, do things after rendering by using useEffect, and it shares logic between components with custom hooks. So hooks only work inside function components or custom hooks. Always start hook names with a use, like useState, useEffect. And you must not call hooks inside loops, conditions, or nested functions, always at the top level. So let's see how hooks work in our application that we made here. So basically, we have this application where we click users and it returns these users from a specific API. You click post and it returns these users, this list of posts from that same API, but for to render this data, and then also for to dos, comments, and photos. So let's see how that works with hooks. So here we have this use fetch component, and in here, this is like the logic behind our application. So we have use fetch and the arrow function. So this function basically takes place after the rendering happens, right? So then we have URL, which basically I believe will have the API in it, and here we have this hook, and basically we have data, which stores the current state of the data from the API, and set data is going to change the state of that data, right? Then we have use state, which use state over here, which is referring to the data basically there. So that is stored in this variable. Then use effect, in the arrow function we're gonna fetch data from that API and return it in a JSON response, and set the data by using set data. We'll set the new state of the data which is in this variable, and we know that this variable stores the data we get from the API, and then we return the data. Then in our users.js, this is our users component, and this is where we've set the API, and we have use fetch here. Within this variable, we have use fetch function, which is fetching data from that API, and then this UR list, unordered list. Within it, we have the map function, which is going to loop through users. User stores all the data from that API that was fetched using use fetch. So each user is given a unique ID by assigning the key to it, and you'll see the name of all the users rendered in the front end. Then in app, this is the app component. Essentially over here we have this arrow function, and inside it we have 5 variables. Within each variable, right, we have the APIs where we're getting specific data. So in users URL, we are getting here's the API attached, and then / users. So we're gonna get the users from this API. Then for posts, we're gonna get the posts from the API, and then to dos over here for the comments as well as the photos, right? So those are the API set there. Then we have this hook. Here we have requested. This is the current state of the data that is stored in here. Then set requested is gonna set the new state of that data, basically over here, which is what I'll show now. Then we have use state post URL, so it's gonna use this variable which has that API basically. So post URL will be stored in this variable requested. So that means requested now stores the data that comes from this API over here from post URL. That's what it's storing. Then we have use within data. We have this data variable. We have use fetch requested. So that means data is gonna be storing the data from this from this API endpoint over here. That's what will be stored in data. Then in our return we have buttons. Now this is what triggers the set requested function. Now when we click the buttons in the front end here, right, as you can see, if I click users, I get all the users that are fetched from the API. So all of that takes place when I click that button. So the on click event listeners executed. Then within the arrow function, set requested function is basically called, and attached to it we have user URL. So it's setting the state of the data in requested or in data. It's setting it to the user URL, which is this first API endpoint. That means the data we're fetching is from here. Hence why when we click users, we get all of this data. Then the same thing happens for the other API endpoints. So over here we have this button and set requested post URL. So it's setting the state of the data with this API endpoint that is stored in requested and data. Then we have one for to do URL, comment URL, photo URLs. And yeah, when you click, it shows all that data that is fetched. Then in order to give it a unique key and all of the unique ID, we use first .map to loop through data, which is this variable, and that variable has the requested that state of the data over there. Then we basically give each of those values a unique key or a unique ID using key, and then it shows all the information in the front end. That's basically how the hooks work and how we fetch data using APIs. Cool.